Okay, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Bill Masterpool, 047041. I'm recently returned from Vietnam. Spent a year out there. I commanded the 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines. I was G3 forward. I was exec in G3 at Khe Sanh, and I commanded the 2nd Battalion, 26th Marines, and I was G3 plans officer. I'm sitting here smoking a cigar with a cup of coffee. I've been asked just off the top of my head to provide some recollections about helicopters in Vietnam and various incidents that occurred there, and any observations that I made while I was out there. When I think about helicopters, I also think about people and the various folks that I was associated with, the flying folks that I was associated with out there. I first think about the air liaison officers and the forward air controllers who were with my battalion, and who to a man were extremely competent, both air and ground, and who really tried harder all the time. When I think in terms of the operational helicopter folks who are with us, I think definitely in certain specific names, and then I think of a multitude of other flyers whom I don't recall their names, but I do recall incidents. When I think of names, I think of guys like Colonel Sam Martin, who, when I left, was commanding the group out there. Sam was the group forward CO when I first met him. I had occasion to operate with Sam personally twice in Vietnam. Those occasions, my battalion was being lifted in a combat lift. The first occasion was in September of '66, and it was the initial landing for the ultimate seizure of Fort Hill 484 and the movement along Mudder Ridge. I remember this particular incident because it was early in my tour in Vietnam, one, and two, because it was a classic lift in that it supported every bit of doggone doctrine that we've taught in the schools all the way along. Sam himself flew the Huey, the command Huey. He had communication with the fixed wing. I had communication with artillery with my own battalion. We carried smoke. We had made the recon initially of the particular LZ. Sam and I discussed it as all the manuals state, our air-ground team, and emphasizes this teamwork. This was it in action, and it was on a real familiar basis. We selected the LZ, went on back, completed our plans, led the assault into the area, rendezvoused the assaulting echelon. Sam controlled the fixed wing, put them exactly where we wanted them on station, prepped the LZ, moved on off to the flank, brought in our choppers, and brought them in good shape, and then covered the debarkation of our troops, moved on over to the initial objectives, and covered their deployment in the LZ. Marking the LZ in advance, we had the smoke, pop the smoke in a particular area. Of course, these are all details that are found in any manual. But frequently we hear stories about warfare that seem to gain a hell of a lot of attention. We threw the book away on hill so-and-so. And they've always disturbed me because after about 25 years you begin wondering what the hell all this studying is for. Well, I discovered that the study is worthwhile, and that working with individuals is even more rewarding, with other folks who know their jobs. This was Sam Martin. Met Sam again and again throughout our tour out there, listened to his complaints about our misuse of choppers, the overcommitment of choppers. We worked our details out together. We frequently found ourselves, in the case of Dong Ha, billeted on the same base, choppers and ground forces. We've got separate problems. We've got to provide them with some security. They've got to provide us with the lift. We work these details out real easily. No strain whatsoever. Again, when I think about choppers, I think about a young, a Major Hasselbacker. Old Has won a Navy Cross out there, and this is historically recorded, and I think the citation, if anything, is probably pretty brief in this area. Dropped his doggone chopper on in, and I'm sure you can pick up these notes on Hasselbacker. But I worked with Hasselbacker on a couple of occasions. Real down-to-earth type guy who, before and after his particular act, was the same Hasselbacker and the same type of pro as Sam Martin. Worked with him in a combat landing. Same situation occurred. Guy flew the airplane, ran the fixed wing, ran his own strikes in a particular zone, listened to my comments as to where we wanted to put things. It just seemed like he had 7 arms, 7 ears, and was able to do the whole damn thing. He knew his job. He knew it real well, and he handled it real well. This is in addition to this specific award in this specific incident, and that was over near Mudder Ridge, over near the Razorback. I'm sure you've got those things in your files, and surely is a classic use of helicopters, and I think typifies what the spirit that these fellows have shown throughout there. Now, we had occasion to be distressed with them periodically. They've had the standard aviators' pretty looseness toward what we consider the snap and pop of ground. Cussed them out one time. They'd be frustrating as hell to me when I'd say I want them there at 06:30 in the morning, and they'd get drift on in about 7:30. Explain some maintenance problems that they had, but it never seemed to me that they were just, they were that loose aviator type. Except, let me emphasize that any time through a year's association with them that I ever designated an emergency medevac, I never got any static from them at all. I brought them into hot LZs. I brought them into spots that were truly hazardous, and I can think of one specific incident at night under heavy fire, and they clearly knew that this was going on. We didn't try to disguise anything with them, but they were always there, just like the handle on the pot in those particular occasions. When they know that the situation is important, they cut the mustard, and they're there on time. I think of an incident at Quezon, during a Quezon fight, and it was just about the close of the Quezon fight. I'm guessing at the particular date in here. I can probably get it within about 3 days, but you can find it in the after-action report. Let's see, it would put it about the 10th of May, at Quezon. Big fight going on for 861, 881, and 881 South. Tremendous use of fixed wing in this particular area. Didn't have too much tactical use of troop lifts for helicopters. We were doing a tremendous amount of work with them in resupply in this particular area. Great deal of coordination was required so that we could continue shooting the artillery and not have to shut it off when we flew the choppers. Now, you got 2 battalions operating in close proximity. You're trying to resupply one, shoot artillery for the other. This gets pretty complicated, and it's hazardous. The pilots understood the doggone situation. We worked it out, worked out their approach routes and their retirement routes, tightened up their hovers or their rendezvous in a particular area, and worked out a pretty close and a pretty smooth relationship. I think about a very, very brave act up there, and for the life of me, I can't remember the major's name. Quiet fella, was with the VMO outfit. Now, I guess I better give you the build-up to this particular story. I'm jumping back and forth. This is the 10 March detail. About the 10th of March, we lifted a helicopter, or a recon outfit, 7 folks, put them on north of our position. They set on down in the area in the late afternoon. We knew there was enemy in the area that had been using a particular route. About midnight that night, matter of fact, it was 12:15 that night, they become heavily engaged at close range. This is like hand grenade distance. 7 guys, or enemy all around them, in real tight. Initially, several people were wounded in a particular group, had difficulty getting a clear picture of the situation, other than the fact that these guys were at spitting distance at this time. So after we got a clear picture of the situation, it was decided that we would make an effort to get them out of there, to extricate this recon team. Well, to spare you the details are probably in the after-action report, and I hope are in the citation for this major. I'm real embarrassed to say I don't recall his name. But there were, for the others involved in this thing, there were 3 attempts made between 12 o'clock or 12:15 at night and about 12 o'clock the following day. These guys were they're in close combat all this time. 3 attempts were made to get them on out of there with helicopters. 1 pilot was killed. Every one of the planes was shot up. I forget how many other folks were wounded in every occasion in each one of these 3 efforts. Now you got to understand, you make 1 effort at night, you make a 2nd effort at night. The pucker factor begins to raise for the chopper people that are going on in for that 3rd effort. This, I think, gets just about as close as I ever care to get to the situation where the classic situation, I guess, is kind of a storybook thing where you begin thinking, are we going to leave live men up there after the number of people who've already been committed? Now, after we make the 3rd attempt, we get another radio message from the kid on up there, and he says he's the only one alive up there. Now, we've made 3 efforts. We've had 1 pilot killed, a flock of folks wounded, every one of the choppers shot up. Now comes a decision for the commander. Yeah, I told Colonel Lanigan was the commander at the time, Jack Lanigan. And we talked about it afterwards. I was his 3 and XO. And we just moved right on in and prepared another plan. But you have to understand that this plan was initiated by the Huey pilot who came on in. This quiet major came on in, said that he was on up there to help us out. He knew full well what had occurred before. We had made 1 daylight, 2 night efforts to get him out, 1 daylight effort. We had used fixed wing to box these choppers on in to get them on out of there. So everything, I feel, every bit of support that was available to get these kids on out of there was employed, while and unsuccessfully. And it was evident that the enemy could have overrun this position at any time. It was equally evident that this was in fact a helicopter trap. And up comes the Huey cat, who says he's ready to make it in, and he has a plan. He says he wants to come in real low and lift up to this particular area. We'd use the same fixed wing plan that we had in the past. He was going to control it from his Huey. We had a alternate controller in the sky. We were going to box this hill in and box the crater that the kid was in as tight as possible with a fixed wing, open up one end of the box, and the Huey would slip on up the hill, slip across the hill, drop down on the crater. By the way, you got everything off the damn thing. We had 2 crewmen who were going with the pilot with this setup. They were going to jump out, pick up the wounded. By this time, we got a further determination that there were, in fact, 3 people alive up there, all of them wounded. The 1 radio operator had discovered 2 others breathing. The 2 crewmen were going to jump out, pick up all the bodies, stuff them in the aircraft, and lift on out of there while the fixed wing car. It takes some balls. And the kid went on in there, and that was the 4th attempt, and he made it. Now, let me tell you, that's 12 hours and 15 minutes that those guys were up there after those 3 attempts. There's a lot of pucker there. There's a lot of pucker for the other pilots, the kids that made the 2nd attempt. How about the fellows that made the 3rd attempt? I'm real sorry I don't remember their names. I have some difficulty remembering my own. Oh, many humorous incidents regarding choppers. Let's see. Guy coming on in, and I was up on Mudder Ridge. I wanted a recon, and he said he was there to pick up water cans. I said, boy, you guys are really getting specialized in this particular area now. I said, you're a specialist in water cans, and I want to make a recon. Next time I want to bring in water cans. Why, he was there for a recon. And the problems involved back and forth in these areas. Helicopter pilots making strafing runs like attack aircraft. I think about the Huey gunship people. Boy, just go anywhere, anytime. I think again about Hazelbaker up at Dong Ha. I had about an hour to kill there. I was waiting for a recon or some aircraft to get ready and whatnot. And Haz took me on over and said, let me buy you a beer and show you our bunkers. And he went over and he was just so delighted with the way, or so proud, I say, of the way that the VMO people had organized their defensive positions at the tip of the perimeter. It was a horrible job. But they had built a bunker there, and they had set up apertures in the thing and firing positions, and each guy had his designated spot on in there, and he was just real impressed with the way he thought that they went after this thing from a ground standpoint. They had built one hell of a bunker. I guess it would have probably taken a 2,000-pound direct hit in the damn thing. But he was kind of fond of it because it was also a pretty cool spot to keep beer on down in there. We sat down in the bunker and had a beer. But this shows the interest in these folks. They were putting a hell of a lot of sweat and effort into this particular thing, not just for their own defense, but just so to show the crunchies that they could do a job. I think about my forward air controllers and my ALOs. Irving Gamble, Flying Fellow, Note Boom, just a flock of others who delighted in being identified as non-militant types of crunches, but walked every foot of the friggin' way, volunteered to move on mission. You got to understand, we got infantry battalions out there, got 2 flyers in it, if you're lucky. I got 4 companies. I got 4 companies running patrols. Those kids are out there, you know, my companies are exposed in a certain measure, and we rotate that. But those 2 flyers are being rotated through the 4 companies. Every damn patrol, because I want some air support on those particular things. Every damn patrol that goes on out of there are one of those 2 flyers. With the bad feet, you know, and the bad backs, and they hate like hell to carry a pack and whatnot, but they made every damn one, never fell out. And I think my battalion was, in the time that I was there, was a senior battalion up there in the DMZ area. This is from this, we were at the DMZ from the 17th of September to the, well, I turned over the battalion on the 4th of March to the battalion left that area, went back to Okinawa about the about the 20th of March. So those kids were up there all this time running all these particular patrols. And I think we recognized that that was a pretty hot time in that DMZ area. We operated through Contien, through Jolin, at the mouth of the Kuviet River. These guys covered more foot-type groundage than any grunt in the outfit. Now I think about a real personal incident. In, let's see the date again now. Operation Hickory. I came down from Quezon 16th of May. I was to be Assistant G3 Forward. On the 18th of May was to be D-Day. On the 17th of May, I was to fly on out, pick up Colonel Hammerbeck, who had the 9th Marines. I had the general's map, and I was to take a tour of all the positions, determine where everybody was, what their situation was, brief the old man when I got back. When we got in the air over his position, and he seemed to be receiving a message over there. I didn't have a headset on. He had the headset. He took it off, and he says, they call you Wild Bill? I allowed as how this is true, and he said, you got command at 226. He said, but we can't get in right now because they're under mortar attack. So we went on back. I bought a canteen and a pack of cigarettes, mortar fire let up, went on into that area. They'd cleaned out, pretty well cleaned out the CP, the battalion commander, the 3, the air liaison officer, the artillery liaison officer, all the key people in them, and 226 had been hit. So I went on in, we start putting pieces together. I got a corporal as my battalion air liaison officer. They later fly me in a wild Italian kid, started with a Z, Zappardello or something like this. Right straight out of VMO squadron, right on up there for me. Delighted to be on up there. Hate like hell to walk, but just delighted to get on in and show his stuff on the ground. Had corporals as FACs, really communicators forward. Old Zappardello came on in. We put together a staff there, and we jumped off in the attack on time on the 18th in Hickory. We had worked our way around north of Comtienne into the DMZ. About the 25th and the 25th of May, we're having trouble with Hill 117. And this 117 is west of Comtienne in the DMZ. I had tried to crack this damn thing from 2 directions, 2 separate directions. Was having a real problem with it. Just couldn't get on in there. We were getting engaged at real close range, 20 meters or so, with folks in real hard positions and hard bunkers. So after trying it twice and not being able to get in there real tight, and nobody pressing me for time particularly on the thing, I said we decided I just wasn't going to get anybody else hurt until we ran a pretty heavy prep in the area. So I laid on for the following morning, the 26th of May. I laid on a 4-hour prep of flight every 10 minutes, with starting off with heavy ordnance, and then an hour before we moved on in there with lighter ordnance that I was going to bring on in closer to my troops. Now, heavy ordnance, I'm talking in terms of 2,000-pound bombs. So about 9:30 in the morning, apparently some trouble breaks out down south somewhere, and they pull off some of my air. So I'm not getting the preparation, not in the intensity that I originally wanted. So I get a call from my regimental commander, Colonel Stockman, and asks me, what do I think? Can I make the jump-off time? So I said, gee, I'd like to go on out there and take a look at the ground. I want to see just what devastation had occurred on out there and see if I had a good, clean path on through. By the way, I followed a principle with the infantry that really all we should have to do with the infantry is, in this particular war, is to move them on in there to kind of police up the battlefield after I've smashed everybody with air and artillery. This makes me very popular with the troops, by the way. But we put this, so he got me, he said, oh, so I said, well, I'd like to go and take a look at the area. So helicopters are pretty lean about this time. But he borrows the general's chopper for me, and they come on up and pick me up. I found this fellow's name, but I want to mention right now. Captain Tinsley is the pilot. Got a crewman with him. Pick me up, and we move on over to where my 2 companies are located, and I pick up the 2 company commanders also. I figure they better get a look at this area in case we go on in. So I pick up the 2 company commanders, lift them. They're in the DMZ, and the companies are in the perimeter. Pick them up. We just lift out of their LZ. We start taking 50 caliber fire from about 500 meters further west. So the chopper goes into his evasive type maneuver, and we get hit smack in the nose with a 37 millimeter. Just drops everything into the laps of the pilot. I notice a pilot gets hit in the neck, and the co-pilot, was actually the crewman who was sitting in the co-pilot's seat, gets hit, tears the helmet off his right side. It hits us right in the nose. I'm sitting right in the seat in the center. I get hit, but I haven't noticed it at this particular time. I just see blood splattered all over my 2 chauffeurs up front. They look pretty bad. We moved on at a rather rapid rate. I figure we're going right into the friggin' Indian country. He makes all kinds of efforts with his stick, gets the damn chopper righted on up, and sets that damn thing down through a double canopy right next to a shell crater. Even as hot and intense as it was, I felt I had to just give him a hug right then for getting us on in there. He laughed about it a little bit. He's bleeding like a stuck hog. He says, "Shit, Colonel," he says, that's the softest landing I've ever made." And after hitting the ground with some of these guys, I was convinced that it was true. But he brought that damn thing on in there. Got the radios taken care of. We picked up our weapons. And it seemed like I had about the whole first air wing on up there at this time. It just happened that we were running a couple of strikes. We didn't even get a chance to run a mayday out of the damn thing. But all these other aircraft turned to. They immediately set a box around us, a damn cordon of steel right about where this chopper went on down. Put bands right straight across it, and a 34 came on in. It was our chase aircraft. This cat came on in. Now I want you to know this is the 26th of May. It's hot, and it's humid, and the area is deep. It's in a deep draw, and it's thick, double canopy. And we got a shell crater there that's maybe a 175 crater. This 34 fella comes on in, sets 2 wheels down on the lip of this crater. We get out of our chopper, get all our gear on over there, and I'm starting to stuff people aboard this chopper. And I realize, hell, I've never lifted 6 men out here, and particularly in a spot like this. So I'm figuring, well, there'll be 2 of us left behind, which really didn't seem like a real choice spot for me. Well, finally, I get the 5th guy aboard, and I'm figuring, oh, shit, what a spot. I got to stay here all by myself. I'm waiting, and the old chopper pilot waves me on, and I get aboard. 6 of us in that damn thing, with the weapons, with the machine guns, with the whole works. He lifts us on out of there, under cover of the damn fixed wing. I am back at D-Med at Dong Ha. It couldn't have been 45 minutes after this thing occurred, with a cold scotch in my hand, provided by the good priest, Father Ryan. And we check over the chopper people. I go back. We're evacuated. They evacuate the pilot. The other kid that looked so bad got torn on the right side. Really wasn't bad at all. Kind of tailored his ear, give it kind of a filigree edge on it, but it wasn't bad enough to move aboard the hospital ship. So the pilot, this Captain Tinsley, Captain Flathman, one of the company commanders, myself were evacuated aboard the hospital ship, where we had a little chance to talk and kind of recap just how lucky we were. Tinsley was aboard there a couple of days. They took some fragments out of his neck. He really wasn't bad off. But I had a chance to talk to this fella. I don't know whether this is significant to this thing or not, but I think I enjoy telling it. His father's dead. He's worked his way through college. He's a professional Marine, professional flyer, likes his work, and is now out of his pay. His mother is alone. He has a younger brother. He's supporting this kid and taking him, getting him through school. Real concerned about, mind you, this is a 25-year-old, 26-year-old fellow. Real concerned about his responsibility to this boy and that he'll be able to afford getting him through college. Tells me quite a bit about himself. Real level-headed type. And of course, I'm full of praise. I submitted a recommendation to the VMO squadron for an award for old Tinsley. He sure as hell rated. Boy, he is just as cool as could be. Okay, let me see. Was it typical? I'd say Tinsley, and this is probably what impressed me so much about this thing, was that I think that he was the typical chopper pilot. This guy is about, the typical chopper pilot is about 25 years old, facing a second tour on out there real soon, busting his ass every day to really to support. Delighted to death when he gets a pat on the back from the grunt, kidding the grunt all the time. I have never seen panic, confusion, or anything non-professional from these folks in the air. This is a year's time of working with them just about every daggone day. Now, these guys are pros, and they take real pride in their work. Future choppers, gee, we got to have a hell of a lot more of them, you know that. They got this 53 monster on out.